we're going to ask some, or you can ask some questions when we're done there. All right. Uh, Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Walther. I work with OpenTHC, and today I'll be speaking on some of the issues surrounding business data privacy and some of the consequences that having our data public have brought to the cannabis community. Something that we do for our clients at OpenTHC is researching domain problems and building a consensus about what some of the right answers are in the industry. This problem became an emergent concern for many folks because of a streak of break-ins to licensee property. One area that frustrated a lot of people was the scope of public data that was available that could be used to find their business facilities. Today, we're going to look at the risk of property damage and theft businesses have in Washington. We'll build a threat model to sketch the picture of how much information is public about these businesses and some of the steps that can be enacted to mitigate the risks. The chief concern that I kept, the chief concern that I kept hearing was folks trying to understand the weak spots in any parts of their business that were putting them at risk for loss. In order to get a better picture of this, I tried to look at some police data, but the information that I requested from the government is still pending. In 2019, Politico quoted SPD regarding a string of break-ins on cannabis businesses in 2017. Without additional context about what crime looked like before and after that, it's hard to say what changed. But if the SPD statistic is a tripling of the cannabis crime rate in Seattle from 2016, the proportion of criminal incidents against Seattle dispensaries to Seattle Square land area increases from 26% to 78%. It's harder to extrapolate on this further, but the mounting risk is clear to a lot of people. Something police are aware of is that the presence of cannabis businesses has no meaningful impact on crime in a neighborhood. Criminologists generally use a combination of community statistics as predictors of crime in an area. The missing data doesn't give us anything to go off of when we're thinking of why criminals target the businesses that they target, or which areas have the highest risk. And given that we had it, it might not really help us understand the crime in a neighborhood a licensee is in anyway. So while we're continuing to work to better understand the criminal relationship to this trend, we can at least investigate the elements that make businesses visible to the public, including to bad actors. This is where the risk that we're discussing becomes a lot more material. Any brick and mortar shop carries a risk of a break-in, but some licensees like farmers live at their licensed facility. This enhances our need to understand the source of this risk. In Washington State, the spread of databases with information on I-502 businesses looks like this. This model looks a little different if a business does other things, but not by a whole lot. Every business in Washington State should be found on the first 3 on that list. It's also worth keeping in mind that these are the agencies with the easiest to access databases. There is another mechanism to get at that data, and much more detailed government records through a public records request. Very broadly speaking, this is the picture of what we can request from the LCB, including information from the traceability engine. OpenTHC regularly requests a snapshot of the traceability engine for research purposes that we conduct. Our copy indicates that no licensed facility was listed with their street address, but facilities were listed with their latitude and longitude in DDM format. Threats can emerge from this data not receiving proper sanitation. When we're thinking about the nature of these threats, we need to consider the combination of proprietary information that could be used against the licensee. Other obtainable information includes floor plans to licensed facilities. These are submitted to the LCB when a license is applied for and on its renewal. Floor plans themselves are not covered by any statutory confidentiality, but markings related to security systems on them are. The language that covers statutory confidentiality prevents information related to security systems, banking information, and company retirement accounts from being public. Data points not covered by statutory confidentiality law can be requested through a public records request, even if the public-facing equivalents omit that information. Other initiatives that the LCB is taking concerning data privacy has been their data sharing agreement project. Among other things, the DSA adds higher barriers to integrators to work with the government reporting system. And it requires that they carry insurance that can compensate for damages in the event of failure. A very large reason why those public-facing databases do not have information that isn't confidential by law has been because of the work here at the TCA. The LCB hasn't been deaf to the industry's concerns, and they have worked with the industry when licensees have pointed out where their businesses have been exposed online. So we're kind of blocked if the industry wants to make some changes to what information is public. Changing statutory confidentiality would require a legislative act, and while agencies are willing to make it a little harder for just anyone to find and expose an I-502 licensee, if they're explicitly asked to turn over some information that isn't covered, they're going to. There are some strategies that we can follow to help us keep our businesses safe. When we can look at these as a general path of escalation to a circumstance where your business is threatened by something that is out of your control. You can think of likely circumstances: a marketing agency selling contact information, or an industry watchdog republishing industry data on the web. In the past, I-502 licensees have had a lot of luck removing this data from the direct public eye without escalating past a politely worded takedown request. The likelihood is that the person hosting the content needs to understand the unforeseen consequences of what they're doing. I would encourage everyone to get used to making public records requests. They are a very powerful tool to engage the government with, to learn about your community, and to increase the political and industrial awareness of your community. But none of this really takes away from the fact that bad actors can use these tools to find out more about a licensee for a break-in. Since the difficulty is in containing this problem, we're going to focus on adding layers of security. I-502 licensees are required to have these minimum security features on their property, but we can't look at this from a minimum requirements perspective. We need to look at this as though this is the least that someone would encounter attempting to break into that facility. These requirements opt to surveil products and provide bare minimum layers of penetration for that facility. Licensees have had each of these compromised by either cutting security system power sources and outweighting their battery backup, or by breaking through less protected sections of building. Keeping these elements in mind, we can add additional layers and enhance existing security posture, and in the events of break-ins, keep the criminal team from the product for longer periods of time. Increasing the battery backup on a security system is a great first step. A power redundancy on the security system that can stand alone after a police response and during the time it takes to repair the main power line maintains a very strong security posture. Licensees can also enter into agreements with neighbors adjacent to their facilities to cooperatively increase the range and redundancy of recorded areas. When I asked the LCB's opinion on this practice, they did not see a conflict with existing WACs or RCWs. They would remind me that cameras on licensee property need to be accessed by the licensee's camera control panel, and that LCB officers had to have access to those recordings within their statutory period. Components like product elephant cages extend the time of criminal operations to finish, and resources like on-site security staff are the things that entire neighborhoods can benefit from and provide invaluable security expertise. Collective investment from a neighborhood can make the entire area safer. So I don't really have any parting thoughts on this other than to reinforce this idea that mitigating risk from crime has this fortification component to it, but it's also tied to this continuous intelligence gathering mission. In order to make our communities safer, we have to give the same effort that bad actors will give into disrupting them. Review weak spots in the same way they might. Work with your neighbors and share information to the broader community, and it will be very light work keeping one step ahead of the criminals. And that's all I have. Jason, do you have any questions or last thoughts?
I don't. Really, really good information. I appreciate that.
For sure. Jill, are you still there?